All right, we are now live on HHTV. You may begin.
Good evening, and welcome to the third of our candidate forums for the 2021 election season. We started our forum series 2 weeks ago and I heard from candidates for the Seattle City Council, King County Executive, and the Seattle School Board. Tonight's forum features the candidates for mayor of Seattle. My name is Neil McReynolds, who along with Laura Weiss, co-chair of the Election Forums Committee, which organizes and conducts these forums. The 3 forums this month prior to the primary election, and then 3 more forums this fall before the general election in November. Co-sponsors of this series of election forums are our Residents Council and Horizon House and the First Hill unit of the Seattle King County League of Women Voters. I want to thank the League for joining us this year and to acknowledge Bernice Kastner, the new leader of the Seattle's First Hill unit and one of our residents. Before turning over the program to our moderator for the evening, let me offer a few words about the position of mayor and what the job entails. Well, in the first place, the city of Seattle has a strong mayor system of governing. In this form of government, municipal government, the city council serves as the primary legislative body, and the mayor serves as city's chief executive. This is different from some of our neighboring cities like Bellevue, which uses the council manager system where the city council hires a professional manager to run the day-to-day operations of city government. Rather than hire someone, Seattle has chosen to elect a mayor to do both managing the many city operations as well as playing a key role in policymaking. In Seattle, the mayor is a head of the executive branch of Seattle's municipal government, charged with the appointment of 25 department heads and commission heads that work directly for the mayor and whose agencies provide basic services to residences and businesses of the city. Those department and commission heads run large and significant operations like the police and fire departments, transportation, Seattle City Light, Parks and Recreation, and public utilities, which provides water, sewer, drainage, and waste collection services. The mayor needs to hire well-qualified people to run the 25 departments and commissions and to provide the oversight and monitoring that those departments are doing their job. Another important part of the mayor's responsibility is proposing, implementing, and monitoring a budget that this year is $6.5 billion, $6.5 billion for 1 year. Obviously, being a mayor is a big job. With that as background, let me introduce the moderator for the evening, Ned Lang. Ned?
Thank you, Neil. Although all candidates for mayor were invited to participate in this forum, only 9 responded. We appreciate their willingness to meet with us. We will begin tonight with each candidate giving a 2-minute opening statement. Following that, there will be questions that have been prepared from Horizon House and League of Women Voter members. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to those. Lastly, the candidates will be called upon for a 1-minute closing statement. The order of speaking for the opening, the closing, and the answering of questions is the result of drawing names from a hat for each of the occasions, a purely random selection. We appreciate each of the candidates making sure that each of the others have an equal chance to be heard by adhering to the timers who will keep us on track. An on-screen warning sign will alert the candidates when they have 15 seconds remaining. And if necessary, hopefully not, a final sign will say, "Finish, please." As this is a forum, not a debate, there will be no rebuttals, but candidates, of course, may include any that they wish in their closing statements. Let us begin with the opening statement. We've asked each candidate to tell us why you are a candidate for mayor and what your goals and ambitions are as mayor and how you plan to accomplish those goals. Our first speaker is Mr. Lance Randall.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Randall?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Lance Randall, and I'm running for mayor of Seattle because we have some challenges that have been going on for way too long. And it's time for a leader that has a vision, a plan to solve problems, and can build working coalitions and produce results. And I'm ready to be that leader. For 30 years, I have worked as a political scientist, economic development practitioner, entrepreneur, and I've held leadership positions with the U.S. Congressman, state senator, mayors, businesses, nonprofit organizations, public-private partnerships, and educational institutions. My background experience make me uniquely qualified and prepared to be Seattle's mayor at this particular time. I have pulled together a platform that will address the topics that are important to the voters in Seattle, which includes the homelessness, economic rebound, revitalizing our music scene, rebuilding our infrastructure, public safety, and climate. This platform invests in our people, our culture, and our future. And you will see that once we put these things in place, Seattle will have a more sustainable and brighter future. The way I'm going to accomplish this is by creating a better working relationship with the city council and the mayor's office, and to have a better partnership with our business community, so that as we move forward, we move forward together, not just as a city, but as a community, to make things happen the way that they should for everybody, so they can benefit from the prosperity that we're going to be creating under my leadership. So I look forward to the conversation and look forward to hearing my colleagues as well.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Mr. Harrell.
Thank you very much. My name is Bruce Harrell, and I'm running for mayor to solve the homelessness issue, to solve it aggressively and thoroughly, to look at the causes of homelessness and make sure we get the people the individualized case management that's necessary to remedy the problem. I'm running for mayor to help our small business environment to not only survive, but to thrive in Seattle after the devastations of the pandemic. I'm running for mayor to make sure that our police department is effective, that we have good response times, good police officers, and that we reimagine what a police department should be, getting rid of the bias that we've seen and some of the murders we've seen throughout this country. I will introduce a healthcare for all program that will make sure everyone has healthcare. I will introduce many things, such as a Seattle Job Center, to improve our situation. You know, I was born up on Capitol Hill, not too far from the Horizon House. Many of you may recall the Cabrini Hospital. I went to Garfield High School. I graduated from the University of Washington, its college and its law school. I currently serve as a trustee for Western Washington University. I am a proven commodity here. I am a result of policies that went very well in Seattle, giving me opportunities that my parents would only dream of. And so I hope to be that mayor that you can trust. We have to earn trust. And I have a proven track record that would suggest that I am worthy of this job. I don't denigrate my colleagues. I think they're all fine people trying to do an excellent job as leading as well. But I hope that you'll look at my candidacy favorably, and I look forward to this discussion this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Echohawk.
Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. I have had the privilege of speaking at Horizon House several times and chair enrichment committees, and have enjoyed every moment of it. So thank you for being here tonight. I wish I was with you in person because I know you're an incredibly engaging audience with lots of good questions and ideas. I am running for mayor because 7 years ago, my life really changed. I became the executive director of Chief Seattle Club, and I got to know our homeless community. I got to know 74-year-old women who were sleeping on mats on the floor shelter here in Seattle with hundreds of other people. I got to know teenagers who had babies and were sleeping in a car, working full-time, getting those babies to daycare, but didn't have the money to get into housing. I got to know these individuals, not just numbers of people who are suffering on our streets. And let us be clear that we have a humanitarian crisis on our hands. Thousands and thousands of people sleep outside in Seattle. This is not who Seattle is. I moved here to Seattle 24 years ago because I fell in love with the city, a compassionate, generous, progressive city. And I talk to neighbors all over the city right now, and they join me in my frustration that our city government has failed not only our homeless community, but has also failed our neighborhoods and our residents, our parks, our streets. I'm running for mayor because I have been proven successful in solving for homelessness, taking care of community members who desperately need someone to help take care of them through the crisis that they're experiencing. I've housed hundreds of people. I've been building affordable housing. I'm building $180 million of affordable housing, hundreds of units, making sure that our communities are taken care of. I have a 22-point plan to bring everyone inside in 14 months. This is based off of real experience and success. I invite you to check out our website to see the plan, and I'm so grateful to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Sixkeller.
Well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Casey Sixkeller, and I'm delighted to join all of you tonight to talk about the challenges facing our city and how, as mayor, we're going to work together to get Seattle back on track. Because the fact is, our city is a mess. But the challenges we're facing aren't new. They've been building for years. From the conditions of our parks and downtown, or just feeling safe when we walk down the street. Every day we walk out our front door, we are reminded of the failures of the city council. And worse, our residents no longer think we can do anything about it. I'm running for mayor because we have to do better. We need to push aside semantics. We'll roll up our sleeves and get back to doing what cities are supposed to do, make government work and solve problems. That's what I've done my entire career, out of the spotlight, bringing folks together to solve problems, starting in Washington, D.C., working alongside Congressman Jim McDermott and Senator Patty Murray, who taught me, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Alongside Dow Constantine, managing the day-to-day of King County, making government work, delivering services to residents across King County, and managing the city through the pandemic over this past year. What our city needs now is a proven leader, a manager, a coalition builder. I've got more than 2 decades doing that at the federal, county, and local level. I've got a plan to get us back to the basics, working in partnership to solve problems, to move our city forward, to get every 10 out of our parks in our first 100 days in office, to hire more cops that are from our community and share our values, to lift up 16,000 working families we know are being left behind, and creating jobs by working with the business community rather than pushing them away. We're going to do it by being honest about our challenges, working as neighbors, being solutions oriented and focused on outcomes, not more process. So I'm excited for your questions tonight. And I hope by the end of the evening, I have earned your support and just as importantly, more importantly, your vote. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Bliss.
My name is Clinton Bliss. I'm a medical doctor, and I've spent my career as a medical leader developing sustainable systems that provide compassionate care for all. I've lived in Seattle for the last 30 years. During that time, I've seen our city change, mostly for the positive, but in the last 10 years, we have experienced an epidemic of addicted persons moving to our city to live in a tent and use theft to support their habit and their basic needs. This epidemic continues to grow unchecked and is now making our city unlivable. No amount of affordable housing and shelter beds will end tent encampments in the practice of enabling addiction through theft. The medical definition of an addicted person is one who will do anything to support their addiction and will choose their addiction over their partners, their parents, their children, their job, reputation, their body, and their housing. If given free housing, they will trade it to support their habit. We have created autonomous tent encampments all over the city that protect and promote this addicted way of life at the expense of the rest of our citizens. Reinforcements arrive daily. No amount of resources will solve this problem without taking decisive action. We must get all tent dwellers out of city parks and off city streets permanently, completely, and all at once. Anything less will continue to grow the problem. We have many challenges in our city that require wise and decisive action. Addicted tent encampments is our most dangerous and pressing. To decisively tackle this problem, we need emergency housing and treatment in a controlled environment that does not allow for ongoing drug and alcohol use. Just like we would do if we had a surge of COVID cases, we need to open an emergency treatment hospital within one of our stadiums. Hospitalization is the model we use for intensive treatment programs everywhere, whether for addiction, eating disorders, mental health disorders, or medical problems. Addiction is a medical problem that needs medical attention. This, more than anything else, is why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Farrell.
Good evening, residents of Horizon House and other members of the community. It is wonderful to be here. My name is Jessin Farrell, and I am running for mayor of Seattle. And I also wish we could be in person. I've attended many forums and meetings at Horizon House, and it's always so wonderful to get to be in person. So I look forward to getting to do that soon. For those of you who don't know me, I am the former executive director of Transportation Choices Coalition, a former state legislator from Northeast Seattle. Most recently, I was appointed the chair by Governor Inslee of the COVID Economic Recovery Task Force. And I'm running for mayor because I'm really frustrated that we have not been able to get in front of our biggest issues, whether it's homelessness, gun violence, climate change, our infrastructure. This is really truly a moment where we need a mayor who is able to be a bridge builder, both literally and figuratively, a problem solver, someone who is able to put in place solutions scaled to the size of the problem. Too often in this city, we pat ourselves on the back for incrementalism, and our problems are big and they call for big solutions. So we need a mayor who shares, our vision of a just and equitable city, is able to implement that vision every single day. And that is what I've been working towards my entire career as an advocate, as a legislator. I helped put together $80 billion in transportation investments. I helped negotiate paid family leave when the Senate was controlled by Republicans and pass other bills that have improved the lives of working people and helped protect the environment in Washington state. As the chair of the Governor's Economic Recovery Task Force, I helped put in place $50 million for those small businesses left out of federal pandemic relief. So I have a track record of delivering results, and that is exactly what we need at this moment. I look forward to earning your support and this conversation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Houston.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Andrew Grant Houston, and I am coming to you from your neighbor over on Capitol Hill. I am an architect who moved here to Seattle, like many individuals, for a job opportunity. It is something where I have tried to be invested to help build housing in our city, but have ran into roadblocks a number of different times. And this has been during our homelessness emergency, which has been declared since 2015 and continues on. And so as someone who is not just an architect, but also a housing activist and organizer with a number of different groups, including serving on the board of FutureWise Washington, I knew after last year's wildfires and the response from the city, where they said we had 95 shelter spaces for currently 5,500 unsheltered people in the county, that we needed more decisive action, and we needed a mayor who could act after 4 years of inaction from our current executive. And so that is why I organized with other people from the very beginning of my campaign. I have the only unionized campaign, and my entire platform that I've created has been informed by our community. And that has also resonated in being the first campaign to hit the primary fundraising cap, as well as being endorsed by organizations such as 350 Seattle Action, as well as the Transit Writers Union. And that is because they recognize that my plans really resonate and honor the things that community has been asking for many years. Because I believe at the end of the day that if we want to become the city that we always say that we are, then we actually need to build new systems that lift all of us up, starting with those with the least first. And that is exactly what I will do as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Gonzalez.
Last but not least, I hope. Good evening,
Nope,
everyone, and thank you so much for
last.
having me. Oh, not quite last. Art, I'm so sorry.
Almost.
My name is Lorena Gonzalez. I'm running to be your next mayor. Thank you so much for having me again. I've had an opportunity to join you all in community in the past. As a reminder, I am, again, Lorena Gonzalez. I'm proud to be a candidate for mayor. I am a first-generation American, a first-time mom, a woman of color that grew up as a migrant farm worker out in central Washington state with my family. And I went from being a migrant farm worker to being a civil rights attorney right here in the city of Seattle, where I fought for victims of sexual assault and for victims and survivors of police brutality as a civil rights attorney. And in 2015, I was lucky enough to be elected as the first Latinx person ever to be elected citywide at the city government level. And throughout my life, I have really learned that the only way that you achieve your dream is to really work hard for it. And for years, that's what I have been doing. First as a civil rights attorney, now as a current elected representative, working hard to achieve justice, equity, and fairness for our community across the city. The ongoing fight for police accountability is one of the many reasons, as a lifelong civil rights attorney, that I am running to be your next mayor. I'm also running for mayor because I have the experience and relationships we need to bring people together once and for all to solve for homelessness, transform our public safety model, hold police accountable, and make sure that we are building a connected, livable, safe neighborhood that all have safe parks, public spaces, affordable childcare, all the things that we know make a vibrant city. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to answer your questions, and proud to be endorsed in this race by many progressives, including Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and every major labor union in the region who's endorsed in this race. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Langley.
I will take that last position, Lorena. Thank you. I am Art Langley. I've lived here my whole life, other than 4 years away in Walla Walla for the college, not for the penitentiary. I'm here because Seattle needs a reboot. And I think that Seattle also needs somebody to be not only a builder, but a bridge builder, as Justin said, which is something that I'm good at. Seattle really needs to focus its attention on restoring services. A city's job is really to make sure that we have good roads, good bridges, good utilities, but it's also important that we have good public safety. And we're dangerously low on police. Crime is rampant. We had 9 murders in June. We had a stabbing last week. The following night, we had a shooting in Roosevelt. Defunding's already happened. It has already happened. It'll take years to restore that, and let's get started. We need to hire the right police for the right time. We need to hire good cops that come in and reimagine our initiatives to do better policing. We need to try some pilot programs and don't just assume they work here, but actually try them out. We need to bring effective solutions to the homelessness problem that's not seen traction in the almost 6 years since it was declared. It seems like the high watermark was when it was declared an emergency. Let's actually get busy and find the data points that show us what works to change this trajectory. Because right now we're spending a lot of money on no change in the number of people that are out on the street. Everybody's pointed out that the sheer numbers of people that should not be out there, it's not compassionate. And we need to make sure that we're spending it and doing it urgently rather than sitting back and coming up with plans that may or may not work. We also need to return vibrancy to our downtown, its businesses. It is an environment for our social well-being, but also in our neighborhood businesses. We need a safe and inviting downtown that will bring tourism back to Seattle. We're expanding our convention center, and we need to make sure that we can fill it up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Langley. Candidates are now going to respond with 1-minute responses to our questions. Our first question is, Horizon House and its residents have a stake in the safety and viability of downtown Seattle. What specific measures for the revitalization of downtown do you consider to be the most important, and how will you promote them as mayor? Our first speaker will be Mr. Sixkiller.
Okay, thank you for this question. This is such an important issue for our city. You know, the fact is downtown Seattle used to be this bright, shiny, welcoming, safe place for folks to come to live, to visit, to shop, to spend time with their families. And that is not at all what it is today. It has been overrun by homelessness, street level crime, boarded up small businesses. And, you know, but for those cruise ships coming back the last couple of weeks, I don't know, we would have seen the type of foot traffic we have downtown. We have got to prioritize getting downtown back. It is an economic engine for our city, but we have to do that by addressing street level crime, by hiring more cops. We have to be more intentional about our approach and connecting folks to safe spaces and services who are living outside in our streets and our parks. And we have to partner with the business community so that they bring their employees back downtown, create that foot traffic and their continued investment in the downtown core. We can do it, but it's got to be at the top of the list of things that we work on in revitalizing and reopening downtown Seattle.
Thank you. Our next speaker, or next answer is from Mr. Randall.
Well, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to make downtown safe again for the people who live there, the people who work there, the people who shop there, and for the tourists that will be coming back. To do that, we must increase public safety in the downtown area to make sure that people are comfortable walking the streets and going about their business. To do this, we must address the open air drug dealing. We must remove people from the streets who are sleeping on the sidewalks and occasional RVs around the area. We must have those removed, but we have to have places for these people to go. And we'll do that through My Dignity Project. Then we must encourage workers to come back downtown so they can revitalize the restaurants, the retailers, and all the other tourist attractions. And we also need to make sure that we are proactive in helping to fill the commercial spaces that have been empty with an incentive program, working with the landlords and potential small businesses who want to move into downtown to do business.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Langley.
Well, thanks. Business really wants predictability, and people want predictability. So they want a safe and clean environment when they're downtown. As I mentioned, the convention center, which is almost a $2 billion expansion, was just recently admitted by the Tourism Bureau that they're concerned that nobody is going to send groups out to Seattle because of our reputation nationwide. It needs to be safe. It needs to be clean. That includes police and, frankly, cleanliness. We need to clean it up. It needs to look good. We also need to stop having open air bazaars for stolen goods on the corner of the street. We can't have people running into stores, grabbing 12 packs of beer and running out. I've witnessed these all myself. We need to make sure that Seattle, that people feel comfortable going down there. We need to rejuvenate our arts. We need to make sure that people can go to Nordstrom's and feel like they can walk out with their goods without expecting them to be stolen. So I think as long as we're aiming for a target, safe and a clean downtown is really important to rejuvenate us both for business and for tourism.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell.
Thank you so much for this question. You know, downtown should really be something that is part of the fabric of all of our lives. Some of my fondest memories are taking the bus downtown with my grandmother once a week to take saxophone lessons at the old Frederick and Nelson building. And so that is just to say that downtown is a neighborhood, and it is really the city's neighborhood. And so there are four things that we need to do right away. We need to transform public safety. And I know we'll get a chance to talk about that more specifically. We need to address homelessness with the urgency that this humanitarian crisis demands. And it is really shameful that we have not gotten in front of this crisis. We need to protect and save small businesses. Small businesses really bore the brunt of the pandemic, and we need to really work with urgency to make sure that those small businesses downtown can make it through. Finally, we need to build more housing downtown. We have added lots of jobs, but we need more housing diversity. Families should be able to live downtown. Economic diversity is what we need downtown as well. So we need to build more housing.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Gonzalez.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the question. I was taking some quick notes here. So I think that in order to address the revitalization of downtown, we need to focus on the built environment first and foremost. So that means activating our public spaces like we are currently doing at the city with our Welcome Back Seattle program to continue to incentivize people with positive behavior in our public spaces to invite them back into downtown, whether you're a resident, worker, or visitor. We need to also encourage and support our arts and culture community through direct investments in those communities like we just did through the Seattle Rescue Plan. We can continue to create that vibrant, cultural, artistic fabric that is critical and key and part of the foundation of our downtown community. We need to continue to invest in our public works projects like the waterfront, Pioneer Square, Pike Place Market, creating connectivity amongst all of those communities, including the Center City Street Connector, to make sure that there is connection to our Chinatown International District neighborhood. And we need to improve walkability and the safety of downtown. And lastly, we need to scale up our investments in programs like Just Care to urgently and rapidly house those experiencing chronic homeless with comorbidities to ensure that they are safely placed and that we are improving the livability for both our housed and unhoused neighbors in downtown.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Harrell.
Thank you very much. So as my colleagues have said, it does start off with, to some extent, public safety. Just making sure that one can feel safe. That is the experience that I grew up with here in Seattle. You may recall that I've been elected 3 times. And when I was the interim mayor several years ago, one of the first things I said is, in addition to having effective public safety, that cleanliness is a part of the city's fabric that we must embrace, that our city has gotten basically very filthy. And so I doubled down on Seattle Public Utilities efforts to clean up the city. In addition to the encampments that, I was the sole sponsor of the human rights legislation under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think it's inhumane to allow people to live in tents without water, without heat. So you'll see our very transparent plan to address the encampment problem downtown. We'll do a visioning exercise where we will reimagine what downtown should look like. And I'll bring leaders out throughout the entire city to help me with this work. I have to stop there.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Echohawk.
When I was downtown over the weekend, and I want to agree with my colleagues that in many ways I was embarrassed because there was garbage everywhere. Things felt kind of out of control and in a really terrible situation. Downtown is a treasure. We have to guard this treasure fiercely. And I can tell you, one of the first things we need to do is solve for the crisis of homelessness. We have let this go on for so long, year after year. I have a friend downtown who sent me a picture recently of human feces on the sidewalk. How did we get here? So as mayor of the city, the number one thing is I will solve the crisis of homelessness. I'm the person in this forum who has the experience and the plan. I want to work with neighborhood groups, downtown residents, Downtown Seattle Association, of which I've been recently a board member, Chamber of Commerce. I want to work with some of our BIPOC-led communities who have been kind of left out of downtown for a really long time. I think that downtown should be a place that everyone can enjoy. And it shouldn't just be a place where you can only afford it if you have a lot of money. It needs to be more diverse. We need to bring in people from all over our neighborhoods and create a downtown that we can be really, really proud of. I am excited about being an ambassador for Seattle. I think Seattle needs someone to champion it and to champion downtown. Part of the way that I'll do that is I think that the city of Seattle needs to open up and bring employees back. There's 10,000 plus employees. They should come back, and we should be the leaders to show the rest of the city that the downtown is safe and is open, and people should come back down. Finally, I'll say that I have a plan for a Department of Public Safety, a Department of Public Safety that truly thinks about what does work and what doesn't work, and bring in our neighborhood groups, bring in our communities who've been innovating and leading in such incredible ways. I am excited to make sure that those voices that have not been heard around public safety are heard. And I think my time is up.
Yes, your time.
I didn't see the timer.
Are we having?
I could keep going on downtown for a long time. I enjoy it.
All of you could.
But I'll stop.
I appreciate that. It is a serious problem. Are we having a problem with the timer? Can I get a response? Well, I guess we'll keep going, and if necessary, I will cut you off and give you a 15-minute warning if we don't have a screen. I will wave my hands at 15 seconds, and at the end of your time, if you go too long, I might just mute your microphone. Our next speaker is Dr. Bliss.
Now I'm on.
Revitalizing downtown is all about public safety and ending theft and vandalism. The main driver of violence, theft, graffiti, and vandalism in our city at this
No, it
time
doesn't matter now because we don't
are
know.
the addiction-based tent encampments around the
Because I
city.
didn't hear him.
No.
It
These
doesn't
continue
matter.
Okay. You don't want to go over a minute, though.
Well,
These-
No, I mean, he will.
Can I go on? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yeah, please.
These continue to grow with the blessing of our city leaders at an alarming rate and must be decisively
I'm
ended.
going to guess that this is going to be.
Funding the police is an irresponsible action that will lead to civil rights abuses by criminals. We must have a robust and rapidly responsive police force that acts lawfully and works directly with our communities to provide real public safety for all. This is why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you very, very much. You were well within your time limit, and I appreciate it. Next, Mr. Houston.
Thank you. So I think this is a really great question, and it's something that I thought about a lot as I was walking around downtown this past Saturday. And I saw so many people out, and one of the biggest issues that I really saw is that we do not have space for certain things that we absolutely need, whether you are housed or unhoused. And those main things are we need more trash cans and more recycling bins so that people actually have places where they can put their trash and refuse. And along with that, we also need public restrooms. I have a clear policy on my website that is all about, there they go to 15.
Go ahead, you've got another 15, a little more.
Oh, that was really fast. I'm also an urban designer, and so something that I was really focused on is changing our one-way streets to two-way streets specifically so we can slow down traffic and make the exterior of our public space in downtown safer for people to get around.
Thank
It felt
you.
like less than a minute, but okay.
Yeah, it was. Thank you very much. Our second question is, the city charter makes the mayor the city's top public safety official. If elected, how will you improve public safety in all parts of this large, diverse city? Our first speaker is Mr. Houston.
Well, I've talked about this with many people. I believe that public safety for us needs to be 100% public safety, but that less than 50% of that is the police. And one of the reasons that I will raise that right now is that, as it was recently reported, reported that the East Precinct's decision to leave the precinct was actually made not by the mayor and not by the chief of police, by another officer. And one of the biggest issues we have right now is that we must reform the police department and we must create true accountability for those officers. That being said, that work will take a lot of time, and we must guarantee the residents of our city true public safety. And that is why I am committed to investing in alternatives that are not simply a person with a gun, like expanding our mental health or our Health One program for crisis, as well as expanding our public safety coordinator position from 1 to at least 7 in each of our districts.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Farrell.
Thank you. So my belief is that we have really lost an opportunity over this last year to have a values-based conversation about public safety. Anyone who's run a large organization knows that you start with the values and objectives, the strategies that achieve those, and then you talk about staffing levels. My belief is that every single person in this city should feel safe as they go about their day-to-day lives. And for too many people, Black and brown neighbors, friends, and family members, that is not the case. We need to transform our crisis response system, which often escalates issues instead of de-escalates issues. We need to transform transportation enforcement. But we also need to fund things like the detective work that goes into property crime work. We need to fund the regional domestic violence unit that is tasked with removing guns from the hands of abusers. So we need to start with our objectives and fund those strategies that work and transform and end those strategies that don't.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Sixkiller.
Thank you. This is, I think, the number one issue facing our city. It's certainly the thing that voters, when I make phone calls and knock on doors, are talking to me about. People don't feel safe in our city today. And the data shows why. You know, shots fired up 35%, robberies 15%, assaults 18%, car thefts 13%. We've lost 300 cops, and 911 response times are twice what they were a year ago. That's the city council's approach to public safety. For me, as mayor, we need to put aside the slogans and be honest about investing in the future we want. That means more cops that share our values, more alternatives when folks call 911, and a chief that's a change agent and a contract that works for transparency and accountability. All of those things together. We can walk and chew gum at the same time on public safety, but we need to be honest and we need to have more tools in the toolkit than the council has taken away from us over the past year.
15 seconds. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Langley.
So our numbers are too low. I think everybody's pointed out that we have a crime problem, and I don't think that anybody can dispute that given the stats that we're seeing. Daily shootings. We've lost our specialty teams. We're down to 1,200, or we'll be down to 1,000 cops by the end of the year and then less. We've got to re-envision how we hire and how we man up our police force and make sure that we bring back those specialty teams that are there to take guns off the street, deal with prostitution, DUI, other petty crimes that are just accelerating the problem. The reforms that we're talking about that they're highlighting in Eugene and Denver, those might be great, but we need to make sure that they're going to work in Seattle. So we need pilot programs to know that they in fact do work here, because there's a sizable difference between Eugene and Seattle. I think that we really just need to make sure that we start enforcing the law so that people realize that we can't keep going the way we're going.
Thank you very, very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Bliss.
We must remove the source of crime, which are addiction-based tent encampments. Police accountability is critical to our success as a city. Our police officers need to work for us, not themselves. Our city council presidents who are now running for mayor are both attorneys with civil rights and public safety appointments who knowingly signed the notorious 2018 police union contract that takes away our civil rights and decreases our public safety. If elected, I would immediately nullify any section of the police union contract that limits accountability and oversight and create a robust and rapidly responsive police force that provides constitutional community policing for all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Harrell.
Thank you. So the selection of the chief police will be absolutely critical in this process. I will hire the most effective chief of police that's possible. Quite frankly, I've already had numerous discussions with chiefs of police around the country and some locally about how we'll go about that process. We will recruit different kinds of officers, those that truly, and that can be 15 seconds already.
No, go ahead.
Well,
you have a half a minute. Yes, you have a half a minute.
Oh, that's only 30 seconds? Well, I've used it up. So anyway, we're going to recruit, we're going to change the culture. We're going to look at how the firefighters take their oath, and we're going to have new kinds of officers, community service officers, more mid-ambassadors. We're going to have a whole new culture to the police department, guaranteeing you the kind of public safety that you want.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Our next speaker is Ms. Gonzalez.
Oh, Toledo, I was going to stand up for you too, Bruce. Listen, this is a really important question, and I approach all of my work related to public safety from a civil rights perspective, first and foremost. Again, I have worked as a civil rights attorney in the state for over 10 years, and to me, it's really important as we talk about the type of leader that Seattle can be in terms of establishing a public safety model that prevents the needless, preventable murders of Black and Brown folks in our community. I think it's important that the next mayor of the city of Seattle fundamentally root our public safety work and the reimagining of our public safety work in the concepts of how to preserve people's civil rights and liberties. So that means making sure that we are bringing forward alternatives to armed law enforcement, things like our community service officers, our Health One mobile unit, and other low acuity models that we know will prevent the needless interaction between law enforcement and armed law enforcement officers. That's the kind of work I want to do, and I want to center people's civil rights in order to be able to accomplish that.
Thank you very much. And our final answer will be from Mr. Randall.
Well, the most important responsibility I would have as mayor is to keep the public safe and protected. And I have to use the public safety service delivery system, which is more than the police department. It includes police department, fire department, first responders, and human service providers. These organizations should be well-funded, well-staffed, and well-supported, and they should work together. Currently, our system is in jeopardy because of our police department has been weakened because of ill-advised policy coming from the council. What I'm going to do is rebuild the police department and also support all of our agencies to make sure that they're able to do their job to keep people safe and protected. We will work with our commanders, the union, and also the police chief to change the culture, and we will partner more with our communities to create a community partnership model where we work together to come up with alternative solutions to keep everybody safe and keep everybody working close with the police department. We have to stop this narrative. The experiment is over. Everyone needs to be safe, and we need a strong, robust public safety delivery system to do that, and that includes the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Rendell. Our next question is, what is...
Ed, I didn't get a chance to answer the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened? You're
No.
right. Go ahead, please. Sorry, Ms. Farrow. No, it's Echo Hawk.
Yeah, no problem. No
I'm
problem.
sorry. I'm sorry. I skipped over you at the start. I'm very sorry.
No
I
problem.
apologize. Go ahead.
Problem. Well, this is a really important question. And as mayor, I will create a new Department of Public Safety. I'll focus on prevention and outcomes. And part of the Department of Public Safety will be implementing a new Office of Crime Prevention that's modeled after the very successful Oakland ceasefire program, which successfully reduced gun violence by 50%. This strategy identifies individuals at the highest risk of participating in violence and provide access to services from community-based organizations. I believe that some of our community-based organizations here in Seattle are so brilliant and innovative, and we need to resource them. We'll also deploy crisis intervention through a hospital-based violence intervention program and provide case management to individuals who are treated for violent injury at hospitals. We will focus on the root causes of violence through prevention, intervention, suppression, reentry, and the equitable distribution of resources. We will also base community-based specialists in neighborhood level and leverage public-private partnership with hospitals for intervention, which will drastically reduce violence. Thank you so much. Check out my plan on my website.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is your plan to reduce homelessness, and how will you pay for it? And to make sure I don't forget, Ms. Echo Hawk, you start out this time.
All right. Well, I am so grateful for the question. You know, I have been working and serving our homeless community for the past 7 years and have been very successful at doing it. I have a 22-point plan to bring everyone who is outside inside in 14 months. That's an emergency housing plan. That's the opportunity to bring everyone together and make sure that we are, as a community, are coming together to solve this crisis of homelessness. I will be looking forward to using the Jumpstart tax dollars, as well as what I'm calling a capital campaign. The capital campaign is a way for everyone in this city, individuals, philanthropic community, business, to invest in our homeless community. It has been over almost 6 years since we declared a state of emergency around homelessness, and the crisis has only gotten worse year after year after year. I am very honored to be an expert that works on this at a national level. I've consulted with the Interagency Council on Homelessness, which is at the White House. I am a board member of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. I have a national network that is working on this crisis of homelessness and affordability. I will use that network to bring as many dollars into the city, and together we can solve the crisis of homelessness.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell.
Thank you. This is one of the pivotal issues of this election. And I, in having talked to many voters across the city, really believe there's actually a great deal of consensus on what it is that we need to do. We need to build more interim homes, more interim houses, whether it's hotel rooms or tiny homes or FEMA emergency housing. We need to bring services to people. We've built up this tremendous public-facing, street-facing COVID infrastructure, public health infrastructure, and we need to pivot that to make sure that people get the mental, behavioral, and medical help that they need. We need to build a lot more housing. Housing isn't the only issue that creates homelessness, but we know that as rents have gone up in this community, homelessness has gone up. We need to build 70,000 more homes. And in those places that are really able to address the homelessness crisis, and in Seattle in small places, we need to use a caseworker model where every single person is known by name and their needs are able to be met through the housing and services that they need. There is new funding from the state, there is new funding from the federal government, and where there are gaps, I will work on making sure we're enacting progressive taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Sixkiller?
Our homelessness response is broken. 20 years of disjointed policies and competing priorities has resulted in the conditions in our parks and streets today. We need to focus on the things we know work. Number one, housing is key. We need safe places for folks to get out of parks and streets and permanent places for them to transition to, so a shelter isn't their forever home. That's why I have a plan to triple the production of permanent supportive housing over the next several years. Data. For a city with an economy driven by data, the fact our homelessness response is so data poor is sort of the irony of all ironies. It's simple. We need to pair investments with performance metrics and a shared sense of what success looks like. Collect data to see if we're meeting that mark, and if not, adjust and keep going, rather than continuing to invest in whomever has the best relationship with the city council. We need to lean in on this regional approach. Seattle cannot solve this alone. It has to be regional and a shared sense of responsibility. And last, it has to be more intentional. We cannot treat homelessness as though it is some homogeneous group. We have to have specific strategies to specific subpopulations and make sure the housing and services are there to support them.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Houston.
So we have the data. We know that from our last point in time count, that we have had roughly about the same 12,000 individuals who have been unhoused for the past 4 years. That being said, what that means is that our current solutions are doing enough to take people out of homelessness, but not enough to prevent people from entering into it. And so for me, the biggest solution is permanently affordable housing. However, as an architect, I recognize that even if we cut every single piece of red tape, it would still take 3 years from the beginning of starting that design until the end of construction. That is why I proposed 2,500 tiny homes to be our short-term solution to treat this emergency like an actual emergency. And once we have that, we can bring people in, provide them services and resources while we work on that long-term solution of permanently affordable housing. In terms of funding, one thing that I will touch on is my just transition tax, of which you can see more details on my website underneath our policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Randall.
So homelessness is a situation that you can't solve because you don't know when someone's going to get into that situation, but we can put processes in place to try to help people get out of this situation. Right now, I want to focus on those individuals who are living on the streets in tents and RVs. We have to create safe spaces for them to get them off of the streets, to provide everything that they need and more access to the service providers that can help them with their issues, whether it's mental health or drug addiction. So that's why I proposed what I call the Dignity Project, to focus mainly on those individuals who are on the streets, to get them off as quick as possible and to enforce the law to encourage them to stay off the streets while we try to help them transition. The other thing we have to do when you talk about finding the money, we have to evaluate the city's current contracting process with human service providers to determine improvements in both accountability and production to make sure that they're effectively doing what they're supposed to do to help our homeless neighbors. If they're not, we need to make adjustments. And I would like to shift some of that money toward the Dignity Project to help get people off the streets in RVs into safe places.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Langley.
We need to bring real compassion to this problem. Currently, we're kind of warehousing people and not redirecting lives. Renting hotels for a year is not solving a problem in the long term. We need to bring data on what works and then double and triple down on the effective measures. We've done a bunch of them that I've worked on in the last 5 years in the Salvation Army that have been extraordinarily successful and very financially doable by the city. We have to also admit, though, that it's not just an affordable housing problem, but we have a drug and mental health issue here. We are collecting 8,000 needles a week. We have to partner with our first-class medical community in Seattle and make sure that we're bringing those solutions to people's lives, because that's what they really need in order to re-trajectory how they're going to go forward. We need to get our streets, parks, and other open spaces clear and create clustered housing in the near term. It's 4 walls, a locking door, and then services that can get these folks the help that they need in order to get their lives back on track. I really believe that we should find the best nonprofits and coordinate through their data. They all have good programs that work, and we need to make sure that they get fully funded.
Thank you. Mr. Harrell. Mr.
Thank
Harrell.
you. Yes, here we go. So you're hearing some great ideas from my colleagues, all of which the city has researched, all of which the city has sanctioned. Individualized case management, housing first, get people off the streets into housing, transitional housing, tiny homes, individualized case management, looking at the many roads that could lead someone to homelessness. So you're looking at policies that are already in place, but why aren't we seeing a difference? Implementation, what a strong mayor will do, using compassion, but housing people, going through a siting process. I think what will distinguish my candidacy from all others is not only using tax resources that we have, revenues that we have, but there's a lot of resources out there from the private sector that I have personal experience with my wife and I raising to make sure we can use that money. In addition to the ARPA funds that we will be getting next year in the tune of 116 million. So you'll see a measurable plan published, cost per unit, cost per person, measurable outcomes, and that's what you deserve as members of the public, and that's what you get from the Harrell administration.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Bliss. Dr. Bliss? You'll have to unmute Dr. Bliss.
Yes, sorry. The most important thing is to stop the growth of people moving to Seattle to live in tent encampments and supporting their lifestyle through theft. And this needs to be done permanently. To do this, we have to provide treatment in a controlled environment. People misunderstand that our homeless problem is a lack of affordable housing. People who need affordable housing do not move into the park and live in a tent. They move to affordable neighborhoods. We do need affordable housing. Under my leadership, the City of Seattle would develop a public-private partnership similar to our public utilities that would be responsible for providing affordable housing for people who work in our city. This would be available for those who make less than 70% of the median household income, and we would build pre-designed and pre-permitted mid-rise units situated around the city. Residents would live close to their jobs to limit traffic travel and our carbon footprint.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez?
Thank you so much. Really important question. You know, after years of learning and understanding the various complexities of homelessness, I know and I'm acutely aware that this is going to take a all hands on deck approach that leaves no solutions on the table. And the reality is that I know that housed and unhoused people deserve a mayor who's going to work tirelessly on immediate solutions, but also on long-term solutions that are affordable housing for the approximately 8,000 people who are currently sleeping outside or in our shelter system. So as mayor, I want to focus on improving our emergency crisis response system. I want to build more temporary and permanent housing paired with individual wraparound services. I want to work to improve behavioral health services and substance use order treatment. And I want to be able to convert unused buildings and hotel space for non-congregate shelter and improve access to job and stable incomes. And of course, take care of the workforce that we ask to deliver these services every single day to make sure that those who are providing us these services are also not experiencing the same instability we're asking them to solve for.
Thank you. Our last question, and many have referred to this, but I'd like you to try to get specific if you could. How will you improve availability and delivery of services to the mentally ill and addicted amongst Seattle's homelessness? Ms. Farrell.
Thank you. This is a really important issue. We are in the midst of an opioid crisis. There are other ways that people are suffering from addiction on our streets. So there are 3 things that I think the city can be doing immediately. Number one, the state has a really strong opioid prevention plan, and it has both upstream actions as well as downstream actions. By upstream actions, I mean working with the medical community to look at alternative pain management, to make sure that opioids are, safe storage, and to make sure that early identification of addiction is happening, as well as the delivery of those things like medical opioid use disruptors like Suboxone, which often take daily administration. Secondly, we can take our COVID response public health infrastructure that's been built up and pivot that to be working towards getting people the mental and behavioral health that we need. Finally, the mayor needs to be working with the state and federal government to be making sure that we are putting the resources into our mental and behavioral health systems that have been depleted over the last several decades.
Thank you. Dr. Bliss.
So I think in my experience, we have not enough mental health beds. I have this problem all the time. I have people coming in to the emergency room and they need to be hospitalized and they let them go free. Violence. I had a guy who was discharged from the prison after 3 months there because he was mentally ill. They had no place to place him and let him out into the street. It's crazy. To decisively tackle this problem, we need emergency housing and treatment in a controlled environment, just like we would do in a surge of COVID cases. We need to open emergency treatment hospital in one of our stadiums. Hospitalization is the model we use to intensive treatment programs everywhere for addiction, eating disorders, mental health problems, and medical problems. This is more than anything why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Harrell. Mr. Harrell?
Yes, I am here. Thank you. So this is perhaps one of the qualities that's not talked about a lot in a good mayor. And that is the ability to recruit and coach and have the best team possible. And that's exactly what we will do. We'll make sure that we have the experts looking at the early indicators of a drug and alcohol addiction issues in the mentally ill. We'll have the best of the best. We will specialize again in individualized case management, realizing that one size does not fit all. We will look strongly at family reunification efforts, realizing that many of these people have had family breakdowns that started years ago, and this is part of the healing process. In short, we'll have the best provider network, making sure they are implementing the best practices. And that is exactly the role of the mayor. The mayor may not have a background in treatment or social work, but the mayor has to be the best recruiter, the best inspirer to get the best people here leading with compassion. That's what I promise as mayor.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Randall.
Okay, first thing we must do is increase capacity of our behavioral health and addiction service providers by identifying ways to provide necessary infrastructure. This can include information technology, administrative support, and what have you. But we need to put more investment into those providers so they can serve these individuals with mental health disorders and keep track of them. We also need to work closely with our community-based organizations to provide them the funding that they need to stay open and provide the services in the community, and also provide incentives for them to hire more diverse people to represent or serve people that look like them in the different communities. Then we also need to partner with other cities, mainly through, this would be a portion of the regional authority, where we want to increase per capita spending throughout the area. This will improve mental health and addiction service across the region and reduce the burden on Seattle, because we're taking a lot of the burden in trying to deal with this issue. And of course, we have to make sure that our service providers are doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not, we need to reevaluate and maybe shift some responsibility to some other organizations that can do the job.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Echohawk.
Yeah, I've had personal experience working with folks who are experiencing mental health crises and who are homeless. I can remember one individual who had schizophrenia. I talked to one day and he started crying and he said, "Do you know that I hear voices?" And I said, "Yes, I know you hear voices." And I said, "It's okay. We're here for you." And I share that story because I want everyone on this call to know that our homeless community has been suffering and they have not been getting the services we need. We have not innovated. We have not really treated it like crisis it is. My plan will treat it like an emergency. My plan calls for innovation around mental health. We know that the state doesn't have the programs. We know at the national level, the programs that aren't there. That isn't an excuse for us to stop working and to stop trying to deal with this at the city level. As I will take responsibility for dealing with it at the city level, working with our community partners. My plan also calls for 100 outreach workers. Part of the way that we deal with the crisis of mental health in our homeless community is wraparound care and consistent case management, people that they know working with them who understand their situation. This is a humanitarian crisis that if it's hurting and harming people, it's time for us to respond. As mayor, I will respond, and I understand the situations.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Langley.
Yeah, this, as I mentioned, is really the key to our homelessness problem. We are really fortunate in Seattle to have a great medical community, some great institutions, and UW Behavioral Health and others within the University of Washington and other hospitals would be a key partnership here, which I'm frankly surprised we haven't sought in the last few years, and that needs to happen. We also need to make sure that as we house these folks immediately, that we create clusters where the services that we provide are for addiction cessation and mental health issues. We want to make sure that they're getting what they need, the wraparound services that everybody talks about. Most of the nonprofits will report that 70 to 90% of the folks that they're dealing with have an addiction or mental health illness problem. So we really need to make sure that that is the forefront and create a database so that we know who we're serving. And every time we give them something that might help, we have a record of it so that if we have to move forward and try something else, we can do that. I think anytime you treat blood pressure, for instance, you try different things and you want to make sure that we know what we've treated somebody with.
Thank you. Last, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you so much for this question. You know, I think the first important thing that the mayor has at her disposal is the bully pulpit. And in lobbying our federal and state and regional partners and in making the appropriately and correct sized investments in order to address the behavioral, substance use, and mental health disorder needs of many of our community. The state of Washington ranks 46th in the nation in terms of investments in access to adults' mental health. That should and needs to be changed and will fundamentally be changed if our state and regional partners invest more in this. And the mayor plays an important role in acknowledging that need and in lobbying tirelessly to meet the mental health needs of those individuals in our community. Second, we do this by investing in the Seattle-King County Public Health System, which is the primary agency responsible for meeting the mental health, behavioral health, substance use disorder needs of individuals. I'm proud to be one of the council members that supported a $1.5 million investment in doing exactly that. And as mayor, I would build on that record and increase those investments to meet this need.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all your concise and interesting answers.
Mr. Lang, I haven't answered yet.
And I also have not either.
Gosh, you're right. Excuse me, Mr. Six Killer. And who was the other?
Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Mr. Houston. I'm very sorry. Mr. Houston, go ahead.
All right. Sorry about the
Mr.
case.
Houston, go ahead.
So what I really want to acknowledge is that addiction is a health crisis, whether you are housed or unhoused. And then that is why during my campaign, I have been an advocate for and tried to organize around pushing for universal health care in Washington state and been a supporter of the whole Washington campaign. The other thing that I really want to highlight is that we need to be able to make these investments, and council has been trying to make these investments for many years. It is something where in terms of trying to treat addiction like a health crisis, they have attempted to fund through the budget community health engagement locations, also known as safe consumption sites, for the past 3 years. But that money has not been spent by the executive. And in that way, the mayor has blocked that engagement from happening, from that treatment from occurring. And so I recognize that both in this crisis, as well as many of our other wants and needs within our community, it is not simply about leading, it is also about empowering council to be able to act and do the things that they want to do to improve our community.
Thank you. Who was the other who said they hadn't spoken?
Casey.
Mr.
Me.
Six Killer?
Six Killer.
Okay, proceed. 1 minute.
Okay, thanks so much. like mental health and addiction issues are not things that popped up on our radar screen a year ago. This has been building and building and building over many years here at the city of Seattle, and we haven't responded appropriately. By the end of this year, over the last 2 years, the city and the county will have spent north of $500 million on homelessness, funding the same approach over and over again. We need a plan that's tied to actual outcomes, contracts that match that. We need to work in partnership with the feds, the state, and the county to make sure our systems are aligned. We need more respite centers and places, sobering centers, places for folks to come in and be safe. We need more inpatient treatment options, working again with partnerships at the federal level, the state level, and local providers. And last, we need to disrupt the street level crime that is helping support addiction. We cannot continue to allow that type of criminal activity that preys on vulnerable people, that supports these types of this type of addiction to continue in Seattle.
Thank you very much. Now we will ask the candidates to give a 1-minute closing statement. Our first speaker will be Ms. Echohawk.
Well, I just want to thank you so much again for inviting us today. You know, when I decided to run for mayor, I called some elders in my community, people that I grew up with who know me very well. And one of them was my Uncle Fred John. And I said, Uncle, I'm thinking about running for mayor. And he said, yes, you should run for mayor. And he said, I want you to remember something, Colleen, that in our language, that the word for leader translates to servant. He goes, he told me that the servant is the one who takes care of everyone in the tribe, making sure that the people who are sick are taken care of, that the babies are taken care of, that the elders are taken care of. That will be my approach as mayor, is to be a true public servant. I didn't anticipate running for mayor, but it just so happens that my expertise and the work that I'm doing and have been doing line up directly to some of the biggest needs in our city. I would appreciate your vote. I'd appreciate your support. You can check me out at my website. And thank you so much for inviting me here today. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for having us as your guests this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you all again. Again, my name is Lorena Gonzalez. I would be honored to earn your vote in this effort to be Seattle's next mayor. You know, I am really proud of much of the work that I have been able to do together with community as a sitting city council member. Everything from secure scheduling to protect our lowest wage workers, to protections for against sexual assault for our hotel workers, to making sure that we are advancing efforts like Jumpstart Seattle payroll tax to make sure that the wealthiest among us are paying their fair share to ensure that we aren't engaging on a austerity budget, particularly important to our ability to engage in a renaissance and revitalization of our city out of this COVID pandemic. I'm running to build on that progressive record. I'm proud to be endorsed by many progressive Democrats and by many major labor unions across the city, many of whom are essential workers, including our healthcare workers. And again, proud to be endorsed by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and many others. Invite you to visit us at our website at lorenaforseattle.com to learn more about my vision for Seattle and the work that I have already done as a public servant for the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next is Mr. Randall.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to speak with the residents of Horizon House and again, share the stage with my colleagues. I've given you information about my background. I would encourage you to go to my website, lancerandall2021.com, to look at my complete plan. What I want to say to the voters is I want you to take a very close look at all the candidates and ask yourself this question. The issues we're dealing with right now didn't just start last year. They've been in place for many years. You ask yourself, who was in charge? Who was in charge when these things began to happen? Who stayed to try to fight them out, and who was in position and made some bad decisions that has made us less safe, has kept people on the street homeless, has made our business community feel alienated, and has really turned our city into something we don't recognize. It's time for new leadership. This is your opportunity to do that, to get new leadership that's going to listen to you and do the things that they're supposed to do in City Hall. This is not time for identity politics or name recognitions. It's time for you to cast an educated vote for candidates who really have your best interests at heart. And I'm that candidate to do that as mayor of Seattle.
Thank you very much. Next, Dr. Bliss.
In my campaign, I am not accepting any contributions nor seeking endorsements. And as your mayor, I won't have to pay back campaign debts and endorsements with public funds and contract favors. Our city cannot afford to continue to make reactive and biased decisions that waste our precious resources. We need real value from our tax dollars if we are to solve our problems. That is why I am running for mayor. If elected, I would immediately nullify any section of the police union contract that limits accountability and oversight, create a robust and rapidly responsive police force that provides constitutional community policing, provide basic emergency food, shelter, security, and treatment to our residents who have no other options, and permanently remove addicted tent encampments from public spaces and city parks. If you want more of what you've been getting, vote for our city leaders who brought it to you. If you want a leader with integrity who will decisively bring lasting solutions to our pressing problems of addiction, homelessness, and police brutality, vote Dr. Bliss for mayor.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Langley.
Well, thanks. And thanks to all my friends at Horizon House for tuning in tonight and later on. Probably like a lot of you, I really don't recognize my home anymore. It's difficult to go around Seattle and see it as it has been in the past. We need a change in leadership with fresh ideas and different skills outside of political games. I think we need services with accountability, and we need to move away from being a political think tank into being a city that gets things done again. I've had 30 years as a business leader, as someone who's deeply been involved in social services. We need that now. I will be that bridge builder that will bring people together to solve these problems, and with effective work that will actually turn Seattle around and get our downtown vibrant again and bring our people back and get the homeless out of our parks and off of our streets and into the help that they really need. And I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Sixkiller.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity to be here tonight and for asking such engaging questions. I think we all were prepared for the Horizon House tonight. I love Seattle, but it's a mess. This election is our chance to get Seattle back on track, to move past divisions and semantics and focus on getting the work done. But to get there, we need new elected leadership. Just because you've been on the ballot before doesn't mean you're qualified to be mayor. What we need now is a mayor who's clear-eyed about the challenges facing our city, who isn't afraid to make tough decisions and stick with them. That's leadership. Flip-flopping on the issues isn't. I've been working my entire life to make Seattle a better place for families and businesses to call home. I'll be ready from day one to build a stronger, more equitable Seattle with thriving neighborhoods and businesses, a city that works, that solves problems, delivers services, and keeps us all safe, a city we can not only afford to make our home, but we are proud to call home. As ballots arrive in your mailboxes this week, I humbly ask for your support and vote. If you want to learn more about me and my campaign, visit us at sixkiller4seattle.com. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Houston.
Thank you all for having us this evening and for having this conversation. I am running in this moment for many reasons, specifically that we have been talking about a lot of these issues and having the Seattle process for many years. And the incrementalism that we have seen is simply not enough. Our current processes are unsustainable, and we recognize that. We are dealing with hotter days of 100+ degrees, and along with that, we are also experiencing an increasing homelessness crisis in our city. And so I am running in this moment because we have less than 10 years to address the climate crisis. And I believe the solution for that is the same for a lot of our other issues, which is to build more housing across the entire city. And as an architect and someone who knows how to make things happen and knows how to bring projects in on time and under budget, I believe I am the best person to move us forward in a way that is unapologetic and uncompromising in bringing the change that is necessary for those that need it most. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Harrell.
Thank you. I heard a candidate said that in evaluating your choice, and I hope you will select Bruce Harrell, in evaluating choice, you should look at someone's record, their past, how they lived their life. The Seattle Times did, and they awarded me their sole endorsement, saying that in their opinion, they thought I was the best qualified for this job. The bus drivers did. They made that same conclusion, as did the many other unions and many other leaders in our community. Congressman Smith, Congressman Strickland, Governor Locke, Norm Rice, Wes Ullman, names familiar to you. They did a deep dive and said what kind of leadership they think is needed right now in this city. I try to lead with a position of humility, and that's why I don't denigrate others that are running for the same positions, trying to solve the same problems. I will run this city as mayor with a spirit of humility, implementing best practices with compassion, with data, and will be a friend to you. Looking forward to visiting you at the Horizon House in person very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Farrell.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jessin Farrell, and I would be so grateful for your support as mayor of the city. To the extent that running for office is a job interview, I really believe that there are 3 core skills that the next mayor is going to need. You need to be able to run a large organization effectively. I have run organizations. I have been in leadership positions in large organizations. The next mayor is going to have to know how to do politics. To me, politics is the art of collectively solving our problems. That means working with the council. It means working with the broad diversity of our community to put in place the things that we know we need to do around homelessness, public safety, gun violence, climate change. Finally, we need a mayor who is able to help this city work together in common purpose. I have been doing this my entire life, and I would look forward to working with you to create the city that we know in our hearts we can be, a place of justice and a place of equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to each and every one of you for your participation tonight and for your willingness to be a candidate. Our system of government relies so much on competent and capable people coming forward and be willing to do the work and endure the sacrifices that being a candidate for public office involves. We're very much indebted to you, and I appreciate it. And I also appreciate, and we appreciate it. I also appreciate how conscientious you were with respect to the time limits tonight. Thank you again for your participation and your very meaningful and articulate participation. I'm turning this back now to Neil McReynolds. Neil?
Well said, Ned, in your closing comments there about the importance of people willing to step up to some of these issues. And there's certainly some tough ones we're facing in the city. This is an excellent forum tonight. I think, thank you, the candidates, for addressing these issues of great concern to those of us, not just in Horizon House, but across the city. And so we're very happy this way this worked out this evening. So thank you very much. Ned, good job in moderating. You handled some unexpected issues that popped up during the thing and handled it well. So as you expected you would. So anyway, thank you. And thanks again to the candidates for participating in our forum, recognizing your busy schedule with the election in just 2 weeks to go. So thank you for taking that time. As a reminder, this is the last of our 3 forums prior to the primary election. We'll resume our election forums in the fall, starting on the evening of September the 27th. We hope you'll join us then. In the meantime, be sure to vote. The primary election is on August 3rd. Ballots were mailed last Thursday, so you should receive them shortly, if not already.